limitations. These challenges are often at the root of poor mental health among individuals with disabilities rather than their disability itself. According to the World Health Organization, people with disabilities are at a higher risk of experiencing mental health issues compared to the general population. This could be due to factors such as social isolation, discrimination, limited access to healthcare, to education and livelihood, limited access to public infrastructure, and the stress of managing a disability. Hello and welcome to Samarth by Hyundai in partnership with NDTV, a movement for equal rights for people with disabilities. To talk about how disability and mental health are deeply interconnected, how mental health issues can arise as a direct result of disability-related challenges, and how does one cope with and try and address these mental health challenges. Today we have with us Raj Mariwala, Director, Mariwala Health Initiative, Neurodivergent; Abha, Khetarpal, Indian Disability Rights Advocate and Counsellor; Kankam, Khosla, Visually Challenged Counselling Psychologist and Mental Health Advocate. Thank you all so much for joining us today in this very important conversation. Raj, I think to set the conversation and this context, to begin with you, if you can just take us to what really are the gaps in mental health support and resources, and how does that even make it tougher for people living with disability?
Right. So, I think first off, I have to say that disabled persons are the largest minority in the world, okay? Now, that being the case, what happens to a person with a disability in their family? Usually, they are a minority of one, right? So there could be loneliness and alienation within the family itself. Then moving on, of course, the next stage of life, which is education and school, procedures, policies and infrastructure, again, is not designed keeping in need the needs of persons with disabilities. So there's another level of exclusion there. And then it continues on. So in that sense, whether you look at education, whether you look at health, or whether you look at livelihood, dealing with daily exclusion, battling it, in and of itself can lead to extreme weariness, shame, guilt. And here I'm not even going to get into stigma. But if I have to look at larger gaps in mental health and disability, understand that the intersection of both, it's two stigmatized identities. Mental health is stigmatized, disability is stigmatized. So dealing with that intersection becomes even harder, particularly when our health systems are not built for it. Our public health interventions are not built keeping disability in mind. Our health communication is not built keeping disability in mind. So then when we come to mental health of persons with disabilities, the idea arises for most people that they don't need mental health support because disability is not a mental health issue. And that is just simply not true. Yeah. And if I have to end, I'll just say that unfortunately, people will believe that, okay, a person with a disability can go to a counselor. Maybe they just need a ramp, or maybe they just need braille on a lift. But that is also not true because our curricula is not designed to keep in mind unique life stressors that persons with disabilities face.
Yeah. And I think what you rightly said, both are stigmatized. Persons with disability, their own challenges, and mental health in India itself is, it is still a topic we don't want to talk about or deal with. Abha, since, Raj has told us, of course, what the gaps are, you have established Cross the Hurdles, and this organization, is a platform which counsels people online, helps persons with disabilities. But I was also reading that you yourself went through something called the duck syndrome, where, on surface, everything is fine, or you're coping with, but internally, there's a lot happening. If you can just take us, our viewers, through your journey when it comes, from actually dealing with the duck syndrome to starting Cross the Hurdles.
Yeah, as Raj told, that there are like gaps. That also happened with me, like the duck syndrome that I talked about. There are chances that persons with disabilities, they fall in the cracks in the system. If I go to my disability specific, like suppose a orthopedician or a rehabilitation specialist, so the person would never look at my mental health. I would say that I feel fatigued. The person would not think about my mental health. Yeah. And if I go to some mental health specialist, the person would turn me away and go to your disability specific medical professionals. So there are cracks in the system, and we tend to fall in those cracks, our condition. And to keep up with the demands of the world, with our familial responsibilities and other responsibilities, we need to show that face, that superficial grace, that we are calm, nothing is happening to us, especially to our parents who have spent all their lives in taking care of us. But we uh, become restless inside. We can't talk about our mental health issues. And this was the condition that I felt when I was working as a teacher. And I found that I'm not satisfied. There was a kind of restlessness inside me. And I thought that many people like me would be there who would need help. So I started this. I took this course, the professional, like masters in counseling and psychotherapy, and I started counseling people with disabilities because I knew they also needed that. And with the online thing, people could relate with me very well. There were no emotional connections between me and them, so they could vent out whatever they thought. They faced their challenges, their stressors, and everything. And to my surprise, I learned from them how they coped up with their issues of daily life, and I learned from them. So I listened and learned. It was like a double advantage for me.
So something which actually started, I think, to help yourself initially when you realize, and how today you're helping so many people, that's really, really incredible. And even if, we want to ask you, Kankam, about your journey. You lost your vision at the age of 18, so you had seen the world before that. And then today you're a psychologist. Take us through your journey, because this journey is for sure very inspiring.
Right.
What have your learnings been, the pivotal moments, your challenges as well?
Right. So I have been diagnosed with rare degenerative disease. It's called retinitis pigmentosa, and it slowly and steadily the vision deteriorates, and you reach a point where you can pretty much not see much, if I'm putting it in right words. When I was diagnosed, I didn't really understand the depth of it at that point of time. I was just 18, just passed out of 12th. I was facing certain challenges during my 12th grade as well. But when I was diagnosed, there was this change that was happening within me, which means there were physical change in terms of my vision getting deteriorated. Then there was obviously emotional changes because of what's happening, the vision loss. Thankfully, I had this supportive family, my parents, who were there with me through this journey. That meant a lot to me. But I could also see the perception of people changing around me. So there was change in the environment that was happening, and not only the change within me. So when I say change in the environment, people who knew me or the newer people whom I was meeting, suddenly I was a person with disability. I was not a person with a completely abled body. This was this new person with disability. And it's quite saddening that disability comes with a lot of prejudices and biases, and these set of ideas and beliefs that people carry. So seeing different people reacting differently to my disability, and the emotional turmoil within me that I was facing day and night, these were the reasons I took step towards the subject of psychology. I took therapy as well, and today I am a psychologist myself.
Amazing.
And now being with the clients from where from the place where I'm coming from helps me to connect with them as well.
Raj, both Abha and Kankam, if they mentioned about parents, she said, you don't want to upset your family, and Kankam said she had a supportive family, which means obviously they have supportive families. But I want to ask you, obviously raising a child with disability comes with its own set of challenges, and when it comes to mental health, it's even tougher, also for the parents. Can you share with us some coping mechanisms or some strategies which will help parents, how to understand, because leave alone, mental health is something nobody wants to talk about.
Right. I mean, this is an absolutely critical question simply because, I mean, again, if I take it at a few levels, where our policies and laws are concerned, caregivers are kind of not included. If I take it at a societal level, caregivers themselves face stigma, face guilt, face shame. And then a certain level below that, if we look at services, whether government or private, caregiving is continuous. So in that sense, do you get respite? Is it okay to take a break? Right? These are some of the issues that caregivers tend to face. And then, of course, at a slightly later stage in their life, when caregivers are senior citizens, there is extreme worry about what's going to happen to their loved one once they are not around. So in that sense, the mental health of caregivers is actually quite invisible and ignored. And, if I have to say a few beginning statements, the very simple thing that your emotions around this particular issue are valid, whether it is shame, whether it is anger, whether it is guilt, whether it's anxiety or depression, I think the basic step is never taken to assure a caregiver that these feelings are absolutely valid and it is okay to have them.
Yes.
Right, that's one point. The second point is really, I would say, in terms of coping, I would say a powerful coping mechanism is to have peer support, is to be around caregivers such as yourself. I think that is as powerful a mechanism as going for professional counseling, maybe even more so, because there is then a small community of people who understands what you are going through. Yes. And it then becomes a safe space for you to talk, and maybe not just talk. As many persons with disabilities know, you build communities of interdependence and care around each other. It could be similarly so with caregivers.
Okay, that's...
Because you do need respite and breaks in caregiving, and it is absolutely valid to want a respite and a break.
Well, absolutely. I think that's a very, very important point. First, acceptance, and then, of course, the coping mechanism to build within the community. Abha, quickly want to ask you about the barriers. There are infrastructural barriers, attitudinal, societal. How do we break away from these, or how can they be removed?
The system has to remove them. And see, we have talked a lot about awareness. And awareness means it differentiates between you and me. We are making others aware, and we have talked a lot about it. Now is the time to accept. Acceptance is the need of an hour. When we start accepting, we make changes in the environment. We tend to make changes in the infrastructure, because disability, anyone can have disability at any point of time in life. So the access, the infrastructural barriers, I can't go to like a gynecologist and get an ultrasound done, because the medical equipments are not accessible. The examination table is not accessible. We don't have accessible mammogram machines. So infrastructural barriers are there. And when the barriers are removed, we would be seen more in the public. There would be less invisibilization. Yeah. And people would join me in my oddities. They won't condemn my oddities. People would join me in my oddities, and I would feel that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I won't feel ashamed to go out. So barriers are everywhere. So I have always told that if you give me accessibility, I would provide you productivity.
And I think what you are going back to the first line you said, system has to break the barriers. I think that's what had really meant it. And Kankam, even what Raj had said, that people who experience disability and mental health challenges, for those stigma you spoke about. Going back to that, Kankam, what you said, how do we build a more inclusive society when we talk about what steps can be taken to actually reduce these stigmas?
I would say, as Raj and Abha just mentioned, that increasing accessibility is one big thing. If we start doing that, we can go a long way. That's I completely agree on that. It would increase productivity for sure, and otherwise, spreading awareness or sensitization programs are important within the community, workplaces, schools, and so on. Not only that, I feel that support system is very important, something that we all, individuals with disability really need that. So support system is something that we all as mental health professionals can also, work towards.
Yes. Abha, you spoke about infrastructure or societal, the barriers. How does this really affect mental health? Because you must be seeing case studies, people who are talking to you. A quick line on how it impacts mental health of people with disabilities.
It makes us all the more apprehensive. We are fearful to go out. What kind of infrastructure we would have to face when we go out. So we are scared to go out. And there are a lot of apprehensions, anxiety. So whenever I go out, I have to go out and I don't know about the place. I become a lot more anxious before that.
So anxiety,
I can't
fear,
eat.
all these things add on.
Yeah.
So it's time for a quick break. When we come back, we will look at solutions and the way forward to build a more inclusive society focusing on mental health. So stay tuned.
The urban person who's looking at this kind of an investment, if you do a dipstick and just check anybody, what do you mean by a house, they will say, or what picture comes to their mind is a cozy 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartment for the nuclear family, right? Now, when you are looking at plot, building, all these may be financially way better and it makes sense more arithmetically, but people have not even thought about it. There's no bandwidth to buy, to build, to take care and to maintain. So therefore, the easy solution for urban living is to buy a good flat where there's good society, good maintenance, and there's enough amenities for you to run around, maybe the club, maybe to take care of the kids and even senior parents living at home. So there are benefits. So therefore, the way to look at it is, if it works for you, then it makes sense.
True independence starts where financial dependence ends. Women's Day might have passed, but the data compiled by a report named Women and Finance by Crystal and DBS calls for your attention. For the longest time, women have been underestimated and underrepresented in many spheres of life, whether that's at home or at work. But for a change, there is a change this time, and I'm going to show you some mood-lifting data. Did you know that 47% of women make financial decisions on their own, and their independence when it comes to making financial decisions depends on 3 things: income source, age, and stage of affluence. Income source. 55% self-employed women take financial decisions on their own versus 39% of salaried women. Does that mean salaried women are more hesitant because they don't control how much they get, or do they? Age. 65% of women above the age of 45 years manage their finances independently. That means older women are financially more independent. Affluence. 58% affluent women tend to have higher financial autonomy versus 38% of semi-affluent ones. Why so? This is due to higher financial literacy and access to resources. Where do they save or invest their money? The report revealed that most women stick with traditional instruments for investment purposes such as fixed deposits and mutual funds, and self-employed women invest more in mutual funds at 17% than salaried women at 13%. How many women are investing in mutual funds? While the share of women in mutual funds has risen in the past 5 years, what is heartening to know that more women from the hinterland of India are investing in mutual funds versus urban centers. And the report also showed that the party state of India, Goa, has the most number of women who invest in mutual funds. Goa has the highest share at 40%, followed by states from the northeast, all in the high 30s. Chandigarh, Maharashtra and New Delhi also have over 30% share of women in the industry's asset under management. Now, I I told you that older women are financially more independent, but women investors, at least 50%, are younger and between the age 25 to 44 years. And one more data. Based on the National Family Health Survey, urban women's involvement in key household decisions surged to 91% in 2019-2020 from just 49% in 2005 to 2006. So, women are now not only taking important financial decisions for their families, but also investing and saving.
Welcome back. You're watching Samarth by Hunte in partnership with NDTV. So now, this segment, we want to talk about solutions. And Raj, my first question, of course, to you here is, what solutions or what strategies would you suggest so that life is easier when we talk on mental health, mental well-being for persons with disability?
Right. So I think I'll continue on with kind of engaging with the barriers and say that one easy solution, easy relatively speaking, is training and sensitizing mental health professionals about the needs and concerns of persons with disabilities, because they are not part of any medical curricula. And in fact, if you are not trained on this, then you could end up doing even more harm to a person with a disability. I think the second solution is a data gap on the mental health concerns of persons with disabilities themselves. And just to give you an example, I think a challenge that we are increasingly facing is climate change. And what happens in a heat wave to persons with disabilities? How does it affect their physical health? How does it affect their mental health? We know that heat waves are linked to suicidal ideation. What are we doing in our policy plans? What are we doing in climate change plans? What are we doing in heat action plans? So I think it's very important at a policy level to look at and center the needs and concerns and unique life stressors of persons with disabilities if we are to engage with mental health concerns of PWDs.
I think that's really well put. Thank you, Abha. Moving on to you. What do you think are the solutions? Of course, I wanted to quickly touch upon unemployment. You know, getting a job is also leads to a lot of stress, anxiety. For women, you know, are there challenges more? For solutions, in a couple of lines, if you could tell
Like
us.
women, their reproductive and sexual health has to be taken care of, because that also takes a huge toll on their mental health. They can't talk. They can't talk about their reproductive health. They can't talk about their needs. So teaching them self-advocacy is really important. And in their midlife crisis time, when they are going through menopause, they can't ask for help. They are too ashamed because there is no dialogue regarding that. We need to inform them. We need to educate them, even the providers.
So information, education, awareness. I think
awareness.
You think those are the most critical points when it comes to solution. The basic things, but critical.
Right.
Kankam, just we know the research proves that there is a connection between physical health and mental health, and also fitness makes a huge impact. You go to the gym, you're active. As a solution, what advice would you like to give persons living with disability? What they can do, when they could start their fitness regime, or any other solution you would like to share with our viewers?
Yeah, so physical exercise, like going to the gym, or probably going for walks in nature with family members, something that I generally do, and it's part of my, it's my go-to self-care activity. Going to the gym, yes, I have learned how to use the machine, and that helps me run on it, because otherwise running on roads is not feasible for me. Self-care is important for each and every individual, and especially individuals with disabilities. Understanding what you like and what helps you is important. For me, it can be exercise. For someone else, it can be cooking. For somebody else, it can be gardening. So we really need to understand what helps and how in terms of self-care. That's true that exercises and movements really help enhance our physical and mental health, and studies show that they increase neural networks, like rebuild neural networks, and other neurotransmitters are also produced, which is really important for our overall well-being. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. Well, it's important to recognize that not all individuals with disabilities will experience mental health issues. Their experiences depend on factors such as type of disability, level of social and family support, access to resources, and individual resilience. Addressing mental health issues amongst people with disabilities isn't just the responsibility of their families and communities, but it's our responsibility as well. It needs us to change the societal structures that prohibit the full participation of people with disabilities. And it needs us to change perceptions and stigmas which lead us to believe that people with disabilities can't lead fulsome and productive lives. More education, more acceptance, more empathy, more jobs, and more inclusion. Thank you so much, Abha, Raj, and Kankam, for joining us and sharing your journeys with us. Well, thank you so much, viewers, for watching Summer by Hyundai in partnership with NDTV.
The urban person who's looking at this kind of an investment, if you do a dipstick and just check anybody, what do you mean by a house, they will say, or what picture comes to their mind is a cozy 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartment for the nuclear family, right? Now, when you are looking at plot, building, all these may be financially way better and it makes sense more arithmetically, but people have not even thought about it. There's no bandwidth to buy, to build, to take care and to maintain. So therefore, the easy solution for urban living is to buy a good flat where there's good society, good maintenance, and there's enough amenities for you to run around, maybe the club, maybe to take care of the kids and even senior parents living at home. So there are benefits. So therefore, the way to look at it is, if it works for you, then it makes sense.
For the past 2 years, people who have wanted to have unsecured loans one after another have had a gala time by borrowing money or small ticket loans via digital apps. But not anymore, because this has led to an inevitable over-leverage in the financial system. This over-leveraging has caused banks, NBFCs and fintech platforms to relook at their business strategy as well as credit underwriting models. Therefore, this means if you need a personal loan now, it may not be as easy as it was. Let's understand the problem better. What exactly is over-leverage? How does it affect you and me? And how is it measured? An over-leveraged borrower is when an individual has so much debt that it becomes almost impossible or extremely difficult to repay that amount. Now, to measure this, every lender, the one who gives the money, has something called Fixed Obligation Income Ratio, or FOIR. This is a ratio which indicates the lender's risk-taking ability. For example, if a lender has a FOIR of 25% and a borrower has taken multiple loans from different entities, then in case the FOIR exceeds 25%, the loan application is likely to get rejected. For banks, the FOIR is low, and for fintech platforms, the FOIR goes as high as 50%, which is why borrowers rush towards digital lending apps for easy money, because high FOIR for fintech platforms indicates their willingness to issue back-to-back loans quicker than traditional banks. Besides this, lenders also look at several other variables such as income growth, repayment history, bank statements, device data, and behavioral patterns to underwrite a borrower. Underwriting a borrower is basically assessing the risk related to repayment of the borrowed money. To combat over-leveraging, let's first look at what banks are doing and then what fintech platforms are doing. Banks have fine-tuned their credit criteria in terms of how much money they should lend to a particular borrower. They are also recalibrating their co-lending arrangements with fintech platforms. On the other hand, fintech platforms are now migrating towards traditional underwriting models which banks already use. They are also changing their business model from a burn and churn model to a building the book model by offering longer tenure loans. Moreover, apart from personal loans, fintech platforms are now exploring other avenues for growth, such as lending to MSMEs and offering loans against property. While all of this is going to make it difficult for borrowers who are taking and have taken multiple small value loans, the first-time borrowers will take a massive hit.
Different people believe in different things. In cricket, some hail the king, some believe in God. Some wait for Mr. Right, some believe in swiping right. Some run away from risk, others run after.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the Small and Mid Cap show here on NDTV Profit. I'm Harsh Saita. With me, as we always do daily, we're joined by the management of Idea Forge today. We have Rahul Singh, who's the VP Engineering, and Vipul Joshi, who's the CFO of Idea Forge, both of who are joining us. Welcome, gentlemen, to NDTV Profit. First